The sample using bias tape is called the Hong Kong seam finish. You want to first inspect your bias tape to see which side of the bias tape is longer. One side is longer only by about a 1/16 of an inch, but we want to start off using the shorter side. So you want to grab the shorter side and open it up completely so that you can see the indentations or the creases in the bias tape. You want to take the short side of the bias tape and line it up with the edge of your fabric. You're going to do this on both sides, but for now, start off with one side. Once you finish, then you can move on to the other side. You're going to start by pinning your bias tape to one of your seam allowances, and this is after you press the seam allowance open. After you pin your bias tape, you want to use the first crease line as a guide. You're going to lift up your presser foot and you're going to bring your needle into that first crease line and sew down that crease line for the entirety of the sample. Make sure that you reverse at the beginning and at the end of your sample. Remember, at this time, you are not using the lines that are on your throat plate, the seam allowance lines. Instead, you're using the crease line that's in the bias tape as your guide as you sew. After backstitching at the end of your sample, you want to raise your presser foot and your needle and remove your fabric. Next, you're going to take the sample to the iron and press where you just stitched. But do not press the creases out of your bias tape. Now you want to flip your fabric to the wrong side and ensure that the longer side of your bias tape covers up the stitch that you just created. Next, you want to pin your bias tape down and then stitch right into the previous stitch. And this is called stitching in the ditch. You're not stitching on the bias tape, you're stitching in between the bias tape and the fabric. For this, you're sewing on the side of the bias tape that's already been sewn, not the side that's only held together by pins. Again, you're raising your presser foot, making sure your needle is raised, and then you're going to insert the needle in between your bias tape and your fabric. You're putting your needle down first, and then your presser foot goes down. So needle down, then presser foot down. I'm going to zoom in here so that you can see it a little better. Take your time and go as slow as you can. Backstitch at the end, raise your presser foot and your needle, and remove the fabric from the machine. Now that you have one side of the seam allowance finished, you can move on to the other side. With your seam allowance lying flat, you should not be able to see your stitch lines, but you should be able to see your stitch lines on the underside.